guide us into a time of reflection and stillness. I'll speak in the first person, I. I invite you to hear it in the same and apply it to yourself if it feels right for you. I get distracted sometimes in the crazy demands and pace and chaos of life. I get busy doing what I do and trying to get it all done by some schedule I impose. And right now I want to stop and recognize how grateful I am for the blessing of my life. I am a miracle. I don't know how I became what I am. I have my thoughts. I have my beliefs. And the one thing that I'm certain of is that in this moment I am here, in this place, with you. It is my joy to be here, in this room, on this planet, in this time. This is my time. This is my gift to be. And I am free to be what I choose to be. I am an emotional being. I am a physical being. I am a thinking being. And beneath it all, I am a spiritual being. And I believe that I am an expression of my source, of my Creator, which I choose to believe is good, benevolent, and loving. Despite what I've done, despite what I will do, I believe I am an expression of love. I take this moment to remind myself that I am a being of love, representing, expressing, representing my source, my Creator, God Almighty. And it is through my spiritual being that I connect to that source by slowing down my thoughts, releasing my emotions, and stilling my physical being, to sit in the space of listening, to see what I might hear. And now is the time that we can practice that for a moment or two, to just relax into the connection with our spiritual source in the quiet stillness. As I emerge from the stillness, I breathe in deeply. Inspiring the sweet breath of life and renewing myself to be fully present to this moment, my now, my only. Amen. Thank you, Travis, Nadine. Good morning. You know, the Dutch have a word, it's my best pronunciation is gezellig. There's a harder G in there that I can't find, but I asked my friend Inga, who's Dutch, to explain it to me, and she says, it's just that good feeling you have, like when you come home from school and you're sitting with your brother and you're having milk and warm cookies. That's the best I got, but I feel gezellig right now, here. Maybe it's the turquoise chairs. Maybe it's this wonderful rug. Is rug the right word for that? Yeah. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, 1 week ago today, I was walking through the halls, the central area of the newly renovated Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. And I got to tell you, it looks good. You know, when I was there in 1984, 41 years ago, it was darker, much darker. It's very light now. But I got to say, not that I want to start a competition or anything, but I feel just as good being here. This place is just feeling wonderful, looking good. I love the energy of renewal and growth that I feel in the presence of the space. So, yeah, gratitude for this. What I want to share a little bit about today is the freedom to be. And we are free to be. At least that's what I believe. I would guess most of you believe that. But I also want to talk about how we forget that we're free to be. How we get distracted by things like habits and judgments of ourselves. I also want to talk a little bit about an idea I've had that as I try to reconcile the traditional Christian learnings that I grew up with and that are a part of me, and then consider the impact of, for lack of a better word, discovering or being introduced to unity and the metaphysical concepts. The way I was thinking about it is I almost think that traditional Christianity is sort of like a two-dimensional context. And when we step into metaphysics and unity beliefs, it becomes three-dimensional. Maybe you've heard of a book called Flatlanders. But in this book, in summary, everyone lives in a two-dimensional world. So basically, they live in the rug. And they can't see up or down because there is no up or down. And then something happens and someone goes three-dimensional. And it just expands the world incredibly. And I think that's what happens with unity. See, in the traditional Christianity, it's pretty much a cause and effect, quid pro quo. Are people familiar with that term, quid pro quo? You know, like, I give you something, you give me something. I don't know what it translates to in Latin. Someone here knows, probably. You know, we're sinners. That's no good. God has to send his son as a blood sacrifice for our sins so that he can be satisfied, so that we can be free. I have to muse when I think about that story, because kind of that's the story, right? That we have this God that demands a blood sacrifice, and we went into Mexico, our ancestors, primarily Spanish priests, And they told the Aztecs, they said, you know, you guys are barbarians. Like, you are sacrificing human beings' blood to satisfy the thirst of your God. You have got to give that up and convert to Christianity. And I thought, I had to think Montezuma is saying, wait, tell me about your God again? So he sent his son so that you could sacrifice? Okay, you see where I'm going with this. So we need to get beyond the often hypocritical literal translation of things. And, you know, you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but I still lean on Marcus Borg. And it's like, if we can just get past literal interpretations of the Bible, we can start to understand the profound truths. Or stop needing it to be true, we can start to see the profound truths. And here's what I believe makes unity, or at least the way we believe things in what we call unity, three-dimensional. The three-dimensionals is provided by the direct connection that I have as a living expression of the Christ. The Christ isn't something outside of me. God isn't something outside of me that I have to submit to and then have them control my destiny. I am a co-creator with my God. I am the living expression of my God. That is a shift in belief that I think is similar to Newton to Einstein. Now, not everybody in here is an engineer, but you've all heard of Newton and Einstein. And in essence, Newton came up with laws of motion that made sense within practical application within the context of the Earth environment, meaning how gravity works here and basically within the practical realm of living. So it's very useful. Newton's a genius. I mean, very much so. But Einstein came along and he blew up the paradigm. And he said, you know, in the practical realm, the Newton equations work, but when we get outside the practical, when we approach the speed of light, things start to get a little bit weird. And he introduced new theories that just totally blew our minds wide open to possibilities. And that led to quantum ideas, and here we are, 120 years after Einstein's, did I say Einstein when I meant Newton? But Einstein's the one that blew it open. We know this. And so I think that's what, I'm translating that to my experience with unity. When I can step away from the idea that God is outside of me, and I can start to appreciate that I am one with my Creator. I am one with God. And together I create my life. I don't know why I'm here, but every day I keep choosing what I am. I am nothing more than the sum total of all my decisions. And that's one of the snags that I want to talk about today, because sometimes we get weighed down by the decisions we made a long time ago. Even in the two-dimensional, I'll refer to it that way, blasphemous as it might be, the two-dimensional Christian world, the promise of God and Jesus is that we are free from the burdens of our past. That's the deal. We take Jesus into our heart. He washes away our sin. And we are free to be renewed, reborn. They probably even give you a turquoise tunic. So we are free from the burden of our past if we can be. So this is where I want to introduce another little mind thought, which is that physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. We express in all four of these realms as living beings. And they all have certain limits, except spiritual. We are not limited spiritually at all. Spirit is infinite. We are part of the infinite. Perhaps when we're done living, we'll rejoin the infinite. I'm not 100% sure, but that is what I choose to believe. Be interesting to find out. I'm not in a hurry. But the other realms are somewhat limited. For example, physical. Assuming that spirit is eternal, that means I was hanging out somewhere before I was born here as a spirit, as part of the wholeness. I don't personally remember that. Some people say they do, or have people help them to remember things that happened before. In my case, December 7th, 1962. However, once I chose to be Bruce, and my mom and dad actually picked that name, I wanted a different name. Anybody ever have that? Like, I wish my parents would have called me something different. I wanted to be named Mark, of all things. And my mom said, and I think she made this up, but she was clever. She said, you know, when you go to school, and and they say your name, what do they say first? Price. And so if I'd have named you Mark, everybody would call you Price Mark. And so she claimed she was going to name me Mark until that. So I'm Bruce. But the point of that is not my actual name, but the point is, well, like I say it this way, let's look at it regards to marriage. When I'm single, does anybody know what the current population of the planet is? Is it 10 billion yet? 9, 8? Let's call it 8. Just for today. We'll just make up a number and call it 8, because it's not important what it is, other than it's very big. So when I'm single, I have 8 billion potential new partners. But as soon as I propose to Nikki, for those of you that don't know me that well yet, Nikki's my wife, and I often use her in my talks. And she hasn't injured me yet. But as soon as I propose to Nikki and she becomes my partner, everything changes. And now I have one. I go from infinite to one. And this is what happens to our spiritual self. We're unlimited, but as soon as we choose to become the idea into expression, then I'm Bruce. Okay, so I'm physically limited a certain amount. There's this process for that. It's called DNA, and so it has to do with my parents, and you know that. I'm never going to be LeBron James. But that's okay, because we need everybody to be the divine expression that they've determined themselves to be. There's a reason for it all. And the best part of the reason is we get to make it up while we still have the mental faculty. So that the mental faculty, while our physical potential is somewhat defined by who we choose to be born as. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm born on an island in Indonesia, I'm born in Canton, Ohio, wherever. It puts me on an arc, a certain arc. That arc has got some wide guardrails, but I'm still on a certain arc. What determines how much I gain of that potential is the freedom of my thought. Thought is the primary interpreter and translator of our spiritual essence. The third principle of unity is I co-create my reality with God through thoughts held in mind. You're familiar? That's powerful. what I think I can be. I need to follow that up with physical. I need to move into the being. These ideas alone are not enough, but through thoughts, words, and action, I live in the truth I know. That's a rough interpretation of the fifth principle of unity. So as I think and then move in integrity with that thought, hopefully in harmony with my spirit, I am Bruce. I am that I am. The same answer that God gave Abraham. Or was it Moses? Or both? It was Popeye. It was Popeye. I am that I am, right? It's good that we can laugh. You know, it's important, I think. I think there's more healing there than anywhere else. And part of laughing is the power of not taking ourselves too seriously. Because if we take ourselves too seriously, we lose something, which is the ability to increase our honesty. Because the more honest we can be with ourselves, the clearer we will see things and the better decisions we will make. It is hard to see yourself. That's one of the reasons why we have in-laws. I kid. But it is one of the reasons why we have everybody else, because you see me better than I see myself. I see the idea of me that I think I'm representing, and you see the effect of me, which is how closely I'm coming to that. And because we struggle to be free of the burdens of our past, we often pretend to be something that we may not actually be, because we judge ourselves. So we need to let that go. And that is the promise of Jesus. In traditional Christianity, lay your burdens at my feet. So that translates too into unity. We just don't have to get all tied up with that Montezuma problem. God does not need a blood sacrifice for me to be free. I'm already free. I was born free. I was probably free before that, and I'll probably be free after that. But in the physical expression, we have to translate things, because there's a certain, I don't know if the word that I want to use is compromise, but like I said, you go from 8 billion to 1. That's a big shift. I go from being part of the infinite to being Bruce. That's a big shift too. But while I am Bruce, I am free to be the Bruce that I want to be. And I'm here to tell you, I have not always felt that way. Right now is one of the times when I was thinking a lot about how I get emotional sometimes when I'm up here talking. And I don't try to stop that. Maybe I should try to rein that in a little more. I don't know. But rather than judge it in the moment, I'd like to say I think it has meaning. I do think the emotional body, the feeling body, works just like it works physically. Like if you pinch your finger in a door, what happens? Youch, right? Like it hurts. And what does that cause you to do? Well, scream. Thank you, Mary. Yeah, swear perhaps. Talk to God in a way he doesn't like. But then you do something to change away from the pain. And then if there's damage, you work on healing it and getting it back to feeling gezellig. I think with emotions, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of emotions. Some of them are exhilaration, joy, bliss. Some of them are sadness. You know, sometimes I just feel like the feelings are just empathizing, and I think that's true. But I also sometimes have just uncontrollable feelings of sadness, and they come around specific ideas sometimes. And I feel that is a clue on a spiritual level that there's just an opportunity for healing. In this case, mine. So when I think about that I haven't always felt free to be me, I am a little sad about the lost opportunity of that. And I also am recognizing that that's a distraction. Like, that can be blessed and released. Because that was then, and that was that moment, and that moment had everything that it was supposed to be, and I was who I was in that moment, and now is now. And I do not want my now to be dictated by my past, particularly the ones that I'm not feeling that great about. So I am relieved of the burden of my past, if I will allow it. Now, if I let go of all the things that have kept me from being the full divine expression of me, whoa, that's a lot of pressure. Now I have to be me, instead of who my mom wanted me to be or my teacher wanted me to be. You know, this morning I'm thinking of that song, "We don't need no education." And I'm like, yeah, like we don't need that. You know, the teachers are trying to, they'll hurt the children any way they can. Yeah. Building the wall, right? Another brick in the wall. Pink Floyd everybody knows this. That's the wall, right? So the wall can be torn down. We live in Newton's world. It's a three-dimensional world with time. From a practical standpoint, we're not going to travel at the speed of light, so we don't need to worry too much about the time distortion and rectilinear distortion that Einstein promises us. These are thought experiments. But they do unlock a key about the infinite potential and the amazingness of creation. It's more than I can get my mind around. And when I think about it, it helps me think about God. I think about infinity, I think about eternity, and I think this is God. And I'm just a piece of that right now. But I am free to be me if I'll let it. But I'm here to tell you, it is not easy to outrun your own shadow. And so we use the power of power. But I like the word that I heard recently, a few years ago, that really helped me understand this power. By the way, purple, this is as close as I get to purple, is the color that empowers me here. Dominion. It's sort of like the power of power, and I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with all the 12 powers. I'm kind of a 12-power nerd. I think of it as like the air traffic controller of the other powers. You know, what do I need now? You know, it tells me that when I make a mistake, I should take the power of love as opposed to the power of judgment. Wisdom. You know, wisdom is knowing that tomatoes are fruit, but not putting them in fruit salad. So the power of dominion helps me know, like, where should I be using my abilities, my supernatural abilities? And how can I be? And how can I use them to move past the burdens of my path and into the joy of my moments, building the aspiration of my future? And it comes down to every single decision that you make. And I think here's the simple thing. in every moment, like they said, how do you get to Mount Olympus? And Socrates said, well, every step you take, you step toward Mount Olympus. That's how you get there. So how do I live the full expression of my divine self? Well, everything I do, I want to be in alignment with that expression, as I'm even discovering what that looks like. Because it's more than I can even understand now, but it's getting bigger for me. Because I'm more free to be me. And I love that. But if you need one thing to sort of reconnoiter your compass, I go with God as love. And so it's like, am I moving, deciding, choosing love? And if not, be loving with yourself to be patient enough to help you find your way into that alignment. You haven't done anything wrong. You're always being the best you can be. But sometimes we get distracted by judgments and histories and habits that we keep repeating that don't serve us anymore. So just look at yourself in the mirror and see that you love you. And know that you are an ambassador, an emissary, a divine expression of love. And let's see where that takes us.